Hey there, welcome to Synth Seeker. My name is Luke. Today we are going to talk about distortion in synthesizers. And I'm going to focus on distortion pedals because I have a whole bunch of cheap ones that I picked up for about 25 bucks each. And this is not a review of distortion units. I'm not going to really talk in detail about the distortion pedals. I'll throw a picture up. I got 5 little cheapy units that I picked up on Amazon or were gifted to me over the holidays. And some of them are from Flamma. I got one from Behringer and one from, I can't remember. It's a clone anyway. But I've just been playing with distortion pedals. And what this video is going to be about running monosynths through this. I'm going to run the Moog Model D through here. And I'll do another video where we talk about running polysynths through here, right? Because the behavior is very, very different. And I've just been exploring this. I've, found some things that work for me, some tones and textures I like. I'm going to share those with you. And really just, as my friend Wabbit would say, I'm going to have a mess around here. Distortion comes in sort of 3 families, right? You've got overdrive, you've got distortion, and then you've got fuzz. And that's sort of like in order of nastiness. What I've got here is I've got some examples of all of these, all right? But when you start running a synth through a distortion pedal, there's a few things you have to keep in mind, okay? If the synth is outputting line level, okay, line level audio, the signal level coming out of it is line level. Pedals aren't generally designed for that. And it's not that some pedals just don't like it and they're just going to completely clip and sound terrible or sound awesome, depending on if you like that sound or not, right? But generally, guitar pedals are meant for guitars, and the signal that comes out of a guitar is much, much lower than the signal that comes out of a synth, all right? And so what you want to do is turn the synth down, okay? Turn it down sometimes a lot, depending on how hot the synth is. And some synths have like a line level output, but they've also got an instrument level output. I'm going to use an instrument level output here. But what you generally want to do is turn it down or stick an attenuator in between the signal and just tone it down. Feed the guitar pedals signals that they are more guitar-like. Okay, it's from an impedance perspective, it's probably not going to be the same. But again, I'm not an electrical engineer. I'm not a guitar tech. I'm literally just messing around. All right, and I have found in my exploration over the last few weeks that turning the volume down on the synth itself gives you a broader range of flavors of tones out of the various pedals. Okay. The other thing to think about is what your synth patch is going to sound like. All right. So like this is, what is this? This is 3 square waves. They are 2 layered on top of each other and 1 an octave below. All right. So you could do this with a 3 oscillator synth. You could copy this with a 2 oscillator synth. Basically, it's 2 squares. One's an 8-foot square and one's a 16-foot square, so an octave apart. All right, and that's real buzzy. The filter's, for the most part, wide open with a tiny bit of resonance. Now, what's important is a guitar pedal, a distortion pedal, expects and is designed for signal and timbres that come through that are behaving like a guitar, okay? So a guitar has initial loud pluck. Its timbre's really rich after that pluck. And as the string sustains, not only does the volume go down, but the timbres sort of mellow off too, okay? So if you're going to just leave your filter full open, that's okay, and you may like that sound when you start running it through a distortion pedal. But what makes the distortion pedal sit up and do its tricks is if the timbre changes over time. So I'm going to turn the cutoff frequency all the way down. I'm going to have some envelope on there. And if I hold this out and sustain it, right, the volume goes down. My amp envelope has got an initial decay, and then it sustains for a while and then goes to nothing, right? And my filter envelope's doing the same thing. I've got this spike at the beginning, and then it decays down, sustains for a while, and then eventually closes, okay? that is a timbre profile similar to a guitar. I'm not trying to sound like a guitar, but I'm trying to feed the distortion pedals a signal that changes over time. Okay, and now you could do this in other ways too. You could use envelopes or LFOs to modulate various parameters on your synth to give timbre changes and feed them into the distortion pedals. Go explore those. I have not yet. I'm just literally playing with a very basic synth here. But that's the sound we're going to be using today. All right, and then I'm going to play with it. I'm going to do things like swells. We close the filter down and... Right, what'll happen when we start feeding it stuff like that? Not exactly guitar-like, but... Right, there is a guitar technique where you pluck a note with the volume down and then bring it up. That's effectively what I'm doing here, and it may sound pretty good. So anyway, let's make some noise. This is where we're at, okay? All right, I got a few different kinds of distortion pedal here. So we're going to start with Overdrive, okay? So if we take this and we turn on, this is a Klon clone, okay? There's a Overdrive pedal called the Klon Centaur, very popular. There's a million different copies of it, and some of them are crazy expensive. The originals are insane. This is a $25 Klon Centaur clone. All right, and it just does an overdrive, and overdrives are generally fairly gentle. All right, I'm doing A-B. Here's without. Here's with. All right. Now, the way I've got my oscillators set up here is I've actually got them playing a little power chord. They're playing a fifth. If we jump back, I've got one oscillator playing the sort of fundamental. I've got another oscillator an octave below, the sub, playing the fundamental. And I've got a third oscillator playing it. This is a fifth. I'm going to bring it back. There it is, just clean. Everything's playing fundamentals. Now if I run that through this overdrive, that's fine, it works, but it actually sounds nicer. You still effectively get the fundamental with that power chord going in there, but it gives the overdrive, the pedal, a little more to chew on. But an overdrive versus a distortion or a fuzz that we'll get to, overdrives are a little on the tame side. Just add some grit, add some dirt. All right, so that's this clone. I've got another overdrive here. And bring in the tuning a little bit. So without, with. So what do we hear sonically? Okay, well, it's cutting some of the low end. It's pushing the mids. And pulling down some of the highs. All right. So now there were two examples of overdrives. And you may hate this sound. You're like, no, it doesn't sound, the synth is a rich sound with a broad spectrum, and this sort of running it through distortion, or overdrive, I should say, pulls a bunch of those frequencies out. Well, that's okay. This is a texture that you either love or you don't like, right? But I will tell you this, that texture is real bitey. And when you go start applying some effects to that, like a little reverb, maybe a little bit of chorus too. Throw a little Juno style chorus on here and maybe a little delay. You may like that sound. I actually like it a little bit harsher. We're going to step up from overdrive, so I'm going to throw in some distortion here. All right, so here's this. Let me turn these effects off for a second so we'll A-B it without all the accoutrement. So here's our original tone. Here's a little distortion. Let's turn up the gain a bit. Now distortion sort of accentuates some of that low end. You don't lose quite so much as you do on an overdrive. And that's, again, I'm not a guitar tech and I'm not a guitar guy. It's real dependent on the circuit. I'm sure there are overdrive circuits that push the low end, but what I'm working with here. So let's A-B between, so here we are clean. Here we are with distortion. You lose some of those overtones and you get mostly the fundamental. And let's jump back to overdrive. Back to distortion. I think there's a little more crispiness on the distortion than there is on overdrive. All right, so let's do distortion with our refrigerator of effects here. Now, there's a distortion pedal I had as a kid back when I thought I was going to be playing guitar called the Rat. I've got a clone of a Rat here. I like this tone. It's real bitey. So if I let that sustain, you sort of hear the point of having a timbre that changes over time. It's changing the way the distortion circuit messes with the sound. So right, if we put a little, do some filter sweeps with that. Sort of like synth distorted guitar tuba. All right, so that's distortions. All right, and then lastly, I've got this Behringer Super Fuzz, which I did a short about this a year ago or something like that. I actually like fuzz the most because it's real spitty. Let's do, let me bring this all back. Actually, I'll do the swells first. Fuzz just sounds evil. Let's go back to a regular sort of timbre. Let's listen to it without the effects for a second. So if here's our original tone. You can clearly hear that fifth layered in there. But that's mostly fundamental. You can hear as the sawtooth waves, or excuse me, the square waves that we're running are sort of modulating, right, and doing a little phase shifting. The distortion responds to that, or the fuzz in this case. picking up there. You hear a little bit of the distortion circuits sort of like amp noise. All right, let's put some effects back on here. And really, that's just me playing, right? Let's increase that crazy ass reverb. God, I love that. Anyway, so the idea here is distortion pedals are your friends. If you're going to mess around with them, do so. But just remember, distortion pedals are really tailored for guitar level signals. So if you're going to run a synth through it that sends out line level, turn the volume way down before you decide, oh, this sounds like crap, and then sell the pedal. I got to try and match them up at least a little bit. And then secondly, when you're making your patch that you're going to feed through it, and I'm just talking about sort of monosynth patches here, having some intervals in your oscillators is going to add some texture there. And you want timbres that sort of decay or at least shift over time. So either ride that filter frequency knob or play with the envelopes to do something with the filter, or play with the, if you're using like a wavetable or synth or something like that, do something that's going to shift the timbres around and then feed those slowly churning timbre shifts into your distortion pedals and see what happens. All right. And really, that's about it. Forgive me for the duration between videos. January totally wrecked me as far as like wanting to produce anything. And then I got COVID for 3 weeks. Crazy. My son brought it home somehow. I assume he was the first one to catch it. And then my wife got it, then I got it. And anyway, we're all fine. And so I'm just climbing back in the saddle and I'm playing around here. I'm going to do another one of these videos in a week or so about polysynths, because when you start playing chords through distortion pedals from a synths perspective, things get very different. And they can actually go south very easily. So I'll have some tips for how to get the most out of your distortion pedals if you're playing a poly through it. And that's about it. So, hey, thanks for spending time with me. And as always, you've been watching Synth Seeker. Have a great week.